roads, homes, hospitals, and schools. According to a first-of-its-kind study from First Street Foundation, all are at increased risk of flooding.
We really wanted to understand beyond just the property, beyond just the economic assessment, what other portions of any property owner or community members' lives would be affected by flood. So we looked at things like critical infrastructure. We looked at social infrastructure, which includes things like schools, museums, government buildings. We looked at roads, and then we broke apart commercial and residential properties.
They found that 12.4 million residential properties face flood risk today. That number is expected to rise 10% over the next 30 years. 2 million miles of road are at risk of flooding right now, with 3% more roads facing the threat over the next 30 years. And the biggest shock comes from flood risk to critical infrastructure.
We found about 1 in 4, 25% of all critical infrastructure across the country at risk of flood. Critical infrastructure is tied specifically to what we would think of as being critical to our communities, things like emergency services, police stations, fire stations, hospitals, but then we also have things like utilities.
The flood risk is rising in virtually every corner of the country, from vulnerable areas near the coasts to places farther inland.
When you look at the places that have the biggest change, all of a sudden you start seeing places in Virginia. You're seeing places in Delaware, Maryland, Long Island, and all the way up into Boston are seeing significant increases. One place that always pops out that traditionally isn't thought of as a location for major flood risk is the Appalachian region. It tends to be driven by environmental factors like warming sea surface temperatures, warming atmospheric temperatures, and then the way that those interact with tropical cyclones and storms that are coming in from the south into the U.S.